that I actually record kind of what we just did as part of the lecture that goes on the YouTube channel, which I've not typically done, just because it's a little rambly sometimes and all of that. But we can see where we land. Okay. So we're gonna start off, and what I was trying to show, no, not those. Where are the front ones? What I was trying to sort of get at with you guys is, seriously? There we go. Sorry. Is the idea of when we go in resistance train, we have to do something to stimulate ourselves to be out of homeostasis. Okay? That was our big, I hope, takeaway from Monday. If you want to adapt, you must throw the physiological systems out of balance, out of homeostasis. Okay? Typically, we use the number of days per week. We use our number of sets. We use our number of reps. We use the number of exercises. Okay? We use the amount of weight that we're lifting to be the stimulus that drives us out of homeostasis. Okay? All of this is just a fancy way of talking about the concept of progressive overload. Okay? It's very, very simple. The one thing to me that all people get wrong about all kinds of training is we just don't train hard enough. Okay? If it's easy, you're not going to adapt. If it's easy, you're not out of homeostasis. Okay? I hate exercising. It is unpleasant when I do it. Okay? My wife likes it. She'll go for a walk and go fast. She's out there having a good time. And I'm like, this is fucking terrible. Okay? But if it's not terrible, it's iffy about if we're going to get any gains out of all of this. Okay? Now, I also have a bad attitude. I like to complain, but there's those things. Okay? But training must take place at an intensity that is higher than whatever it is that you're accustomed to. And unfortunately, the more often you train, the more accustomed you become to things. Therefore, the more difficult you must make it again. Okay? We can overload the system by making the intensity higher, by making it difficult, by altering one or several of the components of our workouts. Okay? And we do this by overload by picking the kind of exercise you're going to do. Right? If you don't ever squat. That may be enough all by itself. Okay? The easiest way to make sure that we're overloading is to make sure that we're lifting a sufficient amount of weight based upon our sets and reps. So weight used or lifted really is the hallmark way to set the intensity of our workout. Okay? And we'll talk about how we do that in a little bit. But this is the big thing, right? If whatever you're doing feels easy, lift more. Lift a heavier weight. You can overload by doing more sets or more reps up to a point. Okay? And there's going to be this interaction generally between the weight you lift and the repetition. The higher the weight, the closer the weight lifted is to your maximum strength, the fewer reps you can do. Okay? The lower it is, the lower the percentage is in comparison to your max, the more reps you should be able to do. I will tell you guys in a few minutes, it does not matter what the weight is, as long as you do enough reps. Okay? To really, really overload, you need to lift whatever weight it is, a sufficient number of repetitions to where you cannot do another one. We call that lifting to failure. You need to lift to failure. All of the scientific evidence tells us that lifting to failure, if it's using a very lightweight or a very heavy weight, we get equal hypertrophy if we go to failure. Generally, it's easier to get to failure if you're using a moderate to heavy weight. Right? You could just do curls and lift your arm up like this. Eventually, after you've done like 2,000 of them, you may get to failure, but you might get bored. And it's much easier if I give you a dumbbell and say, okay, curl 20 pounds until you can't do it anymore. Okay? But the physiology, the endpoint of what's happening, the disruption of homeostasis is relatively the same if we get to the same end. You can alter rest periods. You'll see some workouts where they'll talk about altering the rest periods. They'll claim that this is hypertrophy training. You do these short rest periods and all of this. It's all based on an old study where if you had short rest periods, you got a greater growth hormone response during a bout of exercise. We now know that the acute release of growth hormone in response to one bout of exercise really has no effect on the amount of hypertrophy that we get. You're going to get growth hormone. You need the response. But if it's a little bigger or smaller, that's less of an issue. So, but you can alter the rest periods. If you shorten your rest periods, it sucks. Okay? It sucks. You will reach fatigue and failure faster with fewer reps if you shorten your rest periods. And then you can do things with the order of exercises. Generally, we recommend big muscle groups, compound things that require movement across more than one joint first, because they're harder, they're more complicated. You want to be as fresh as possible when you do those. So squat first, then do hamstring curls and knee extensions, okay? Then go do RDLs or something if you want. If you do your RDLs on your leg day and not back, whatever, okay? That's what we're gonna look at here, okay? We need to change these things in some way, shape, or form to make it more difficult and provide our stimulus and provide our overload. We will rehash right specificity that whatever we're doing here, however we're overloading, that's what we're going to get better at. Our adaptations will lead to less disruption of homeostasis in that movement, in that joint, in that muscle, for that number of sets, for that number of reps. You'll get better at that, okay? And there's a little bit of cross transfer. But if you did 12 sets of 3 reps with a very heavy weight on squats, you're going to get better at that. You may not get better at doing a lighter weight 25 times or something. Okay? The adaptations we get are very, very specific. This is why we have to know what our goal is. What do we want to get out of this? Okay? When your roommate says, I want to go resistance train, what should I do? Your real first question should be, what do you want to get out of it? What's your goal here, right? Because until we know that, we can't really make some really informed decisions on what to suggest for them to do, okay? Okay. Some definitions that I want you guys to have. I'm sure many of you, if you've had health and fitness, if you've had personal training or something, have seen these before. But I want to provide these definitions because they will come back up, okay? When I talk about muscular strength, I mean the max amount of force you can generate at any point, okay? When that is an isometric force, it's called a maximal voluntary contraction or an MVC, right? You guys may remember from health and fitness when we did the hand grip thing and you squeezed, right? That's isometric, that's an MVC. For most resistance training, we're going to measure something called a 1 repetition maximum or a 1 RM. It's the most weight you can lift once through a full range of motion. Unrack the squat rack, get in there. How much weight what's the most weight I can go down and upward? Okay. Generally, this is going to be what we're going to try to use is a percentage of maximal strength to prescribe the weight you're going to lift during a bout of resistance training. Some people will talk about or mention muscular endurance. That's an ability to have repeated contractions against a submaximal load, okay? So you have enough muscular endurance to do 6 reps or 8 reps or 12 reps or 100 reps at something, okay? People will sometimes talk about training for muscular endurance, okay? Generally, that's going to involve much lighter weights or body weight type of things where you do repetitions I think the formal definition is above 15, usually though it's probably above like 20 or 25. Okay? Very kind of different. Strength training or resistance training is things where you're going to have a relatively large percentage of your 1 rep max as the load. Okay. Something where you're going to do like 3 or 4, maybe up to 10 or 12 repetitions. That's strength training or that's resistance training. Okay. We get, by doing that kind of training, we get an increase in strength and an increase in muscle size. Low resistance training, which is oftentimes referred to as muscular endurance, is maybe 35 or 40 reps until failure. This might be the fitness test where it's okay, do as many push-ups as you can until you get to failure. Do as many crunches or sit-ups as you can until you get to failure. Okay? Typically, that leads to an increase in the number of reps that you can do. So endurance goes up. And if you go to failure, you may get some muscle size. This kind of training may be able to increase size, but it's very, 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 very ineffective at increasing maximal strength in the same way that strength training is. Okay? We'll get into why that is probably on Friday. Okay. What do we know? I should have asked this question as part of the other deal, but how strong can you get? Okay. How strong can you get? And this is an area where there's also a lot of misconceptions out there. An average person, okay, can probably gain somewhere between maybe 25 to 100% of an increase in their 1 repetition max strength over with consistent training over, say, 3 to 6 months. Okay. 25 to 100%. So that means if you can lift 100 pounds right now, in 6 months, your gains are likely to be somewhere between, you can lift now 125, right, to maybe 200 pounds. Okay. For some of you, that probably makes some sense. For others, you may think that's a whole lot. For some people, are like, oh, I thought I could get as strong as I want. Okay. We know there are limits on all of this. One of the biggest drivers of how strong you can get is how strong are you at the start. Okay. People that never resistance train are, relative to their muscle size, are going to be less strong than people that have done a bunch. And if you start off at a relatively lower strength, you have a greater capacity to injure. Okay. And we will explain on Friday why that is. It will make a whole lot of sense to you guys. Okay. But that's where we are. Gains in strength are similar between men and women, old people and young people. Okay. Until the 1990s, we thought that men could get stronger and respond better to resistance training than women. And it was just a mathematical problem that we had not ever bothered to normalize their change in strength to where they started. Okay. It was, oh, this guy can squat 200 pounds. This girl can squat 100. The guy goes up to gains 100 pounds and can now squat 300, right? That's a 50% gain. The girl went from 100 to 150. It's the same 50% gain, but they'd be like, oh, well, the guy can now lift 100 pounds more. That must be, they respond better. Mathematically, it makes no sense. We did a lot of things like that in exercise phys. So that, but we know that it's basically the same. Okay. It's very, very, very related to initial strength and to some extent to genetic potential. Some of you guys genetically, because of the way your motor neurons and things work, because of your fiber types and these things, will have a greater capacity to increase than others. Okay. Okay. There are 2 components to the strength gains. There's what's called a neural component or a learning effect. We change and get better at motor unit recruitment, at firing rates in those motor units. Okay. Our firing rate, we get better at rate coding. We also get better at turning the Golgi tendon off. Okay. Those were some of the things that we talked about on the last test that contribute to our actual strength. Okay, so we get better at those things. Then there is a contractile protein adaptation. This is muscle size. So you get better at using the muscle you have, and then at some point you actually will get more muscle. Well, most of you will get more muscle. Not everybody. You will get more muscle. Okay. When there's more muscle, there's more actin and myosin, there's more cross bridges, and therefore there can be more force. Okay. You may also change the pronation angle just a little bit, which will be advantageous, right? But again, these are things that change. If we fit them back into our things that control force production, then these adaptations should hopefully make some level of sense to you. Okay? If I am now stronger and my muscles haven't gotten bigger, right, and I haven't changed the velocity or the range of motion, then basically all I'm down to is it has to be the nervous system that's changed. Okay? Neural adaptations occur quickly. Work out today, stronger tomorrow. Okay? That kind of thing. Very, very quick. Contractile protein adaptations may take 6 to 8 weeks before we see noticeable things. And that's a terrible thing for exercise adherence. People want results now, right? I went to the gym today. I want to look swole today. Okay. You may look swole today, and then you go and you sit down an hour later, and all the water goes back out of your muscles, and you're back to whatever you were beforehand. Okay. But it takes sustained effort over many weeks to get bigger muscles. And that's hard to get people to be consistent and to keep doing that. Okay. Now, you guys may ask Dr. Black, where do we get those numbers that you just showed us? Why do you think those are the numbers and those things? My buddy said he got 300% stronger, and maybe he did. This is what's called a histogram. This is data from a study published in 2005. This is, as far as I know, the single largest resistance training study ever published. It had 585 participants. Okay. 585 participants. They did single arm curl. Okay. This was done at Boston University, MIT, Yale. Somehow Harvard chose not to participate, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Okay. They did 12 weeks of training. They did 3 sets of 12 for a month, 3 sets of 8 for a month, 3 sets of 6 for a month. They reassessed their 1 rep max, and they used MRI to measure muscle size. Okay. But what you see here is this is their gain in strength. Here's their 1 rep max, gain in strength. Here's their bicep MVC isometric contraction, gain in strength. And this is what's called a histogram, but we've got men in black and women in white bars here, but it's the percent change and then the number, the percentage of our participants that got that change. Okay. And we have this relatively normal distribution that centers itself somewhere around about 30 to 50% of an increase. But there are some people that trained and did not get stronger, they got weaker. I don't know. Somebody out here got 250% stronger. Okay. If you look at the MVC, it's much tighter, going to be in here, but this is where we base, and this is what we use to base these things on. We can argue when you squat, is the response different than your biceps? Sure, of course it is, right? Do you use your biceps more than other muscles? Sure, right? But this is what we think is relatively representative across most people and most muscle groups, all right? Okay, we'll pick up here on Friday.
Either email it to me or bring it to the front.
Email your in-class assignment to Ty or bring it up if you have it on. Thank you. These are corrections, Ryan? No, you're just turning it. You don't want to do corrections. Okay. I'm going to make sure I keep that straight. No corrections. Okay. Of course, Justin.
So, this is But like when I looked at this chart, like that's not right.
So we've got myosin head binds, actin, so it's bound here, right? You're getting a cross bridge. The question is, what is going on? So see, when it binds, there's the inorganic phosphate being released, there's the ADP molecule, right, that are still
Yeah.
on there. So what? So it is, so you've got it releases, which you got credit for, but you gotta talk about, you know,
What's
where,
in there?
where is the ADP? When is the ADP? Is there ADP bound? When is the ADP? You put that it's released here, but you needed to say, you need to say that the ADP was bound.
If you're just dropping it off, you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
put,
Okay.
last summer right here, guys.
You don't need them? Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So,
Class.
In class, test corrections go over here. Test
I
corrections.
thought you were getting all the way back to where,
Corrections. Corrections. In class. Pardon? Yes.
So I gave you kind of points to.
Reminds me of your name. Good time.
Brandon. Yes.
Brandon.
I was also missing. ATP. So how ATP gets back into this one. Wasn't in.
Yes, you are.
It was 4 points for getting the step correct.
I didn't notice
And
it.
then 4
Thanks,
points
it's
for
missed.
mentioning ATP.
It's okay.
Great.
And then if you don't want to do correction, you just bring it back
Just give it back to us today.
today.
Yeah, if you choose not.
That's correct.
So there's no argument point of issue today.
Making
Yeah,
decisions.
so yeah, if you wanna do test corrections, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really get once, test corrections, like.
Oh, yes. You need to be able to see it so you can make the decision.
I'm not doing this.
Not doing
That's a
corrections.
decision.
Okay.
I can see it.
I would say this upcoming exam, metabolism, is how you feel about metabolism. I think the second, personally, maybe the second exam is harder than the first one, it's the other way around.
I haven't got my test dog, we see birds.
So that's the decision for you. Sounds good. And then how many exams are there? Sounds good. Yeah. Did you wanna do correction for this one? No, other than that.
Okay. Here are in class.
Thank you, sorry.